Shadows crossed the line. The days following Alyssa's haunting visit to Aaron's apartment weighed heavily on him. The echoes of her last words, *GIF, I can't have you, no one else will, still haunted him, hanging in the air like a dark omen. He had filed a restraining order, hoping it would finally sever the invisible chain binding her to him. But deep down, he knew that a piece of paper wouldn't stop Alyssa if she was determined enough. Aaron tried to return to his daily life, immersing himself in work and spending time with friends, hoping the distraction would ease his anxiety. But the feeling of being watched never left him. Everywhere he went, he felt her eyes on him, like a shadow lurking just out of sight. The weight of her obsession pressed down on him, and every unexpected sound or unfamiliar face sent his heart racing. One night, while sitting at a bar with his friend David, Aaron finally opened up about the extent of Alyssa's intrusion into his life. He told David about the cameras, the gifts, and the unsettling visits that had plagued him since the breakup. David's face turned grave as he listened. "Aaron, this is serious. She's not just heartbroken. She's unstable. Have you thought about leaving town for a while? Putting some distance between you two?" Aaron sighed, a weariness evident in his eyes. "I thought about it. But why should I have to give up my life because of her? I just want this nightmare to end." David placed a reassuring hand on Aaron's shoulder. "You don't deserve this. If you need anything, call me. Don't try to handle this on your own." But even as David's words offered comfort, Aaron knew he was alone in dealing with Alyssa's relentless obsession. And despite his resolve, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was always just a step behind him, waiting for the moment to re-enter his life. Meanwhile, in the isolation of her apartment, Alyssa's mental state continued to deteriorate. The more she dwelled on Aaron's rejection, the deeper her resentment grew. In her mind, she had sacrificed everything for him. Her career, her dreams, her very sense of self. And yet, he had abandoned her without a second thought. The anger and despair that simmered within her twisted into a dangerous fixation. If Aaron couldn't love her, then he deserved to feel the same emptiness that consumed her. To Alyssa, this wasn't revenge, it was justice. She began following him more closely, studying his routines with meticulous care. She watched him from afar, her gaze cold and calculating. She knew which grocery stores he frequented, which routes he took home, and even the specific times he went jogging in the park. She observed his interactions with others, searching for any sign of betrayal or infidelity, her mind fabricating stories to justify her growing hatred. Then, one evening, Alyssa's obsession took a darker turn. She drove to Aaron's apartment building, parking her car down the street where she had a clear view of his front door. She waited for hours, the night air chilling her to the bone as she kept watch. She wanted him to see her, to know she was still there, watching and waiting. When Aaron finally arrived home, he spotted her immediately, his face drained of color as he approached the entrance, his pace quickening. He didn't acknowledge her presence, but Alyssa saw the flash of fear in his eyes. A part of her thrilled at the sight, relishing the control she still held over him. The encounter left Aaron shaken. He spent the rest of the night locked in his apartment, every creak and shadow feeding his paranoia. The boundaries between his sense of safety and Alyssa's obsession had shattered completely. He knew he couldn't continue like this, but he felt powerless to stop her. In the days that followed, Alyssa's behavior grew increasingly bold. She began sending Aaron a series of ominous messages, each one more disturbing than the last. "You can't run from me. We belong together, Aaron. You'll understand soon enough." The texts unsettled Aaron deeply, but he resisted the urge to respond. He knew that engaging with her would only encourage her fixation. Instead, he documented each message, each unwanted visit, hoping it would strengthen his case with the authorities. But his patience was running thin, and his fear was turning into anger. He wanted his life back, free from the constant threat of Alyssa's presence. Then, one night, Alyssa took her actions to a new extreme. While Aaron was at work, She broke into his apartment, her hands trembling as she stepped into the space that had once been a sanctuary for them both. She walked through his home, touching the furniture, running her fingers along the walls, breathing in the scent that still lingered. In her mind, she justified her actions as a reminder of their life together, as though being in his space would bring them closer, even if only in her own twisted imagination. Meanwhile, in her apartment, Alyssa was preparing with a focused intensity that bordered on mania. She moved through her darkened space, her eyes glinting with an eerie calm, as she gathered the items she would need. A key she had kept hidden, a photograph of them from happier days, and a small vial of perfume, Aaron's favorite scent. She believed, in the depths of her fractured mind, that this night would end the way it was meant to, that she and Aaron would finally be reunited, bound together in a way he couldn't resist. As the clock struck midnight, Alyssa slipped out of her apartment, her steps quiet and deliberate as she made her way down the street toward Aaron's building. The world around her felt hushed, as though holding its breath in anticipation. She reached his front door and paused, her hand resting on the key she had never returned. She closed her eyes, savoring the weight of it in her palm, the final tether that bound her to him. Inside, Aaron's nerves were stretched thin as he waited, his senses heightened by the anticipation of her arrival. Every sound seemed amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards, the distant murmur of traffic. He strained to listen, his breath shallow, knowing that at any moment she would appear. Then he heard it, a soft, barely audible click as the lock turned. His pulse spiked, and he gripped his phone, prepared to call the police, though he doubted they could arrive in time to stop her. The door eased open, and there she was, framed by the dim hallway light, her silhouette casting a shadow over the threshold. "Aaron," she whispered, stepping inside, her gaze fixed on him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. Her face was a mask of calm, but her eyes betrayed the chaos within, a storm of emotions barely held in check. "Alyssa," he replied, forcing himself to remain composed. "What are you doing here? You need to leave." She shook her head slowly, her lips curling into a faint, unsettling smile. "No, Aaron. I'm not going anywhere. You and we need to finish this. We need to understand each other." "There's nothing left to understand," he said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "This obsession, Alyssa, it's not love. It's something else, and it's destroying us both." Alyssa's smile faded, replaced by a look of wounded disbelief. She stepped closer, the scent of her perfume filling the room, an unwelcome reminder of their once intimate moments. "Don't you see, Aaron? I did everything for us. Everything. I sacrificed my whole life to make this work, to make you happy. How can you turn your back on that?" He took a step back, his hands raised in a gesture of calm. "You're not listening, Alyssa. This isn't about us anymore. This is about you needing help. Real help." Her expression hardened, her eyes flashing with anger. "You think I'm crazy, don't you? You think I'm just some broken doll you can throw away because I'm inconvenient. Alyssa, please, just leave, and we can talk about this. But you need to go, right now." But his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Alyssa's gaze flickered over the room, lingering on the photos he had put away, the traces of their life together that he had erased in an attempt to move on. Her voice softened, almost pleading. "Remember when we first met, Aaron? That cafe, the conversation we had about our favorite books. You told me I was the most interesting person you'd ever met. I thought that meant something." Aaron felt a pang of guilt but forced himself to stay resolute. "Alyssa, those memories don't change what's happening now. The person you're becoming. It scares me." She laughed, a bitter sound that echoed through the quiet room. "You're scared? You think you're the only one who feels anything. You have no idea what it's like to feel this emptiness. To know that the one person who made you whole wants nothing to do with you." A silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. Alyssa's breathing quickened, her hands clenching at her sides as her gaze bore into him. A mix of love, anger, and despair. In that moment, Aaron realized that any appeal to reason would be futile. Alyssa's mind was beyond logic, twisted by her need to possess him in any way she could. Without warning, Alyssa lunged forward, her movements quick and frenzied. Aaron stepped back, startled, as she grabbed hold of his arm, her grip iron-tight. She leaned in close, her voice a fierce whisper. "You can't leave me, Aaron. Not now. Not ever." Desperation flared in his chest as he struggled to pull free, his heart racing with fear. "Alyssa, let go. This isn't you. The person I cared about. She wouldn't do this." Her grip tightened, her nails digging into his skin. "You don't get to decide who I am," she hissed. "You made me this way." The challenge. In the bustling space station Nexus 7, located at the crossroads of three major galactic arms, Commander Sarah Chen stood before the Galactic Council with what many considered either the boldest or most foolish proposal in recent memory. The massive chamber, filled with representatives from over 200 spacefaring species, had fallen into an unusual silence. Distinguished members of the Council, Chen's voice carried clearly through the chamber. For millennia, species across the galaxy have sought to prove their superiority through warfare, resulting in countless deaths and destroyed worlds. Today, humanity proposes an alternative: the Galactic Combat Federation. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. A Valaxian representative, their crystalline form shimmering with agitation, rose from their hover platform. "You propose to institutionalize violence. This is precisely why many consider humans too primitive for galactic society." Chen smiled, activating a holographic display that filled the chamber with images from Earth's history of combat sports. "What we propose isn't mindless violence, but regulated consensual combat that channels competitive impulses into something productive. Boxing, wrestling, martial arts. These sports helped humanity unite across cultural divides and foster mutual respect." The Orcs delegation, a species of towering reptilians known for their warrior culture, leaned forward with interest. Their lead representative, Supreme Commander Cathor, clicked his claws against the metallic podium. "Explain further, human. How would this prevent actual conflicts?" "Think of it as diplomatic combat," Chen continued, pacing the chamber center. "Instead of fleet battles costing millions of lives, disputes could be settled in the ring. But more importantly, it would serve as entertainment, cultural exchange, and a way for species to demonstrate their capabilities without bloodshed." The chamber erupted in overlapping discussions. The skiffle, a hive mind species appearing as clouds of bioluminescent particles, formed into a questioning pattern. How could such combat be fair? Every species has different biological advantages. Chen activated another hologram, this one showing detailed technical specifications. "We've spent 5 years developing adaptive arenas and handicapping systems. Using quantum computing and biomechanical analysis, we can create level playing fields while preserving the unique attributes that make each species special." The next hour saw intense debate as Chen outlined the proposed rules, safety measures, and economic potential of the Federation. Videos of human combat sports throughout history played in the background. Ancient gladiatorial matches evolved into modern MMA, showing humanity's long journey of turning combat into sport. Dr. Xandar, a Meridian bioengineer known for their cautious approach to innovation, raised their tentacles in question. "Your species has a concerning history of violence. How can we trust this won't devolve into exploitation?" "Because we've learned from that history," Chen responded, her voice firm. "The Federation will be governed by an interspecies council, with transparent rules and strict oversight. We're not proposing this to dominate. We're offering our experience in transforming combat from a source of destruction into a celebration of skill and courage." As the session continued, more species began showing interest, particularly those with strong martial traditions. The Arxer and Krell delegations were already discussing potential champions, while the more diplomatic species saw the potential for reducing actual conflicts. The turning point came when Chen made her final offer. Humanity will host the first tournament on neutral ground, with all proceeds going to galactic peace initiatives. We'll demonstrate every safety measure and compete under the same rules as everyone else. Judge us by our actions, not your preconceptions. Thor stood, his massive frame drawing all eyes. The Arxer Empire supports this proposal. We have long sought worthy challenges without the waste of war. Let us test ourselves in honorable combat. One by one, other delegations began signaling their support. Even the Valaxians, despite their initial skepticism, saw the potential benefits of a regulated combat system over the current pattern of sporadic conflicts. As the session concluded, the Council had provisionally approved the formation of the Galactic Combat Federation. Chen's team immediately began coordinating with various species to establish the first tournament venue on Nexus 7's lower levels. In her private quarters that evening, Chen sent a message to Earth's United Sports Council. Phase 1 complete. The galaxy is ready to rumble. She smiled, knowing that humanity's peculiar gift for turning violence into sport might just help bring peace to the stars. The real work was just beginning. Within weeks, construction crews from a dozen species were transforming an entire section of Nexus 7 into the first official GCF arena. Engineers worked around the clock to install gravity modulators, atmospheric controls, and safety fields that would allow everything from aquatic to gaseous species to compete safely. The galaxy watched with a mixture of fascination and apprehension as humanity's ambitious experiment took shape. Little did they know that this was just the beginning of a revolution that would reshape interstellar society forever. Rules of engagement. Chief Technical Officer Maya Patel stood in the center of the prototype arena, surrounded by holographic representations of various alien species. 6 months had passed since the Council's approval, and the challenge of creating fair fights between radically different life forms was proving more complex than anyone had anticipated. Run Simulation 17, Maya commanded. The AI system activated, showing a theoretical match between a Krell warrior, whose silicon-based biology gave them natural armor, and a Meridian fighter whose liquid form could flow through the smallest gaps. The problem isn't just physical differences, she explained to the assembled team of xenobiologists and combat specialists. It's fundamental laws of physics. How do you make a fair fight between a creature that manipulates gravity and one that exists in 4 dimensions? The team had converted an entire deck of Nexus 7 into a research facility. Walls displayed endless streams of biological data, combat algorithms, and physics equations. In one corner, a Valaxian crystal form studied ancient human martial arts videos with obvious fascination. Dr. Xandar, who had transitioned from skeptic to lead safety consultant, manipulated a complex hologram showing neural response patterns. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. Instead of trying to neutralize biological advantages, we should embrace them while ensuring balanced competition. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Thor's youngest offspring, Tilara, had been observing human children playing a game called tag in the station's recreation area. Why not make the differences the point? She suggested during a planning session. On my world, we have hunting games where different strengths require different strategies. Maya's team spent the next week developing what they call the class system. Instead of trying to make every species fight the same way, they created specialized categories. Titans, for species with exceptional physical strength or size. Shifters, for metamorphic or phase-changing beings. Manipulators, for those with telekinetic or energy projection abilities. Swarm forms, for collective consciousness species. Synthesists, for cybernetic or technologically enhanced fighters. Multidimensional, for beings that could alter spacetime. The real innovation came in the scoring system. Rather than simple victory conditions, fights would be judged on technique, adaptation, and strategic use of natural abilities. A Titan couldn't win just by overwhelming force. They had to demonstrate skill and control. The rules must serve two purposes, Chen explained to the Federation's newly formed board. They need to make the fights fair and exciting, but more importantly, they need to encourage understanding between species. Every match should teach us something about each other. The first test matches revealed both the potential and the challenges of their system. A Krell warrior named Stonebreaker faced off against the Skull Collective in a demonstration bout. The Krell's natural armor seemed unbeatable until the Skeffel demonstrated their ability to coordinate millions of particles into complex attack patterns. The match ended in a draw, but the spectators were captivated. Species that had never understood each other's capabilities gained new respect for their differences. Trading routes and diplomatic relations improved between worlds that had previously been hostile. Not everyone was pleased with the development. A coalition of traditional warrior cultures protested that the rules were domesticating combat. Others saw the Federation as a threat to established power structures. During a particularly tense board meeting, an Orcs traditionalist slammed his fist on the table. "This is making a mockery of combat. Where is the glory in fighting with such restrictions?" Chen calmly played footage from Earth's history of dueling. When humans first regulated combat, many said the same thing. But we discovered that rules don't diminish glory. They elevate it. Anyone can hurt someone weaker. True skill comes from winning within constraints. The Federation faced its first major crisis when a Valaxian fighter shattered during a match against a sonic-based species. The incident nearly caused an interstellar diplomatic crisis until recordings showed the Valaxian had attempted an illegal resonance technique. Rather than backing down, the Federation used the incident to strengthen their safety protocols. New regulations required all fighters to undergo extensive training in interspecies combat awareness. Medical teams specialized in xenobiology were stationed at every sanctioned event. As the first official tournament approached, Maya's team worked around the clock to perfect the systems. They developed new technologies like the neural dampener that could regulate certain species' natural advantages without nullifying them completely. The most popular innovation was the spectator sphere, a revolutionary viewing system that allowed audiences to experience fights from any perspective, with real-time translation of all fighter communications and tactical displays explaining the significance of each move. By the time the Federation announced the tournament brackets, over 40 species had registered competitors. The galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented, combat that celebrated differences instead of trying to eliminate them. In her private log, Chen recorded, "We're creating more than just a sport. We're building bridges between species that have never understood each other. Every match teaches us something new about the amazing diversity of life in our galaxy. And maybe, just maybe, we're learning how to turn our differences into strengths instead of reasons to fight." Rising stakes. The grand arena of Nexus 7 hummed with anticipation as millions of beings watched Hilura, the young Orcs prodigy, face off against Whisper of Stars, a Skiffle collective champion. The tournament had grown beyond anyone's expectations, becoming the most watched event in known space. Admiral James Wong, newly appointed head of security for the Galactic Combat Federation, watched the match with growing concern. His neural implant was picking up unusual energy signatures from the lower levels. Something wasn't right. "Security Team Alpha, check Sector 7, he subvocalized into the command network. As Hilura executed a perfect counter against Whisper of Stars' particle storm attack, Wong's attention was split between the spectacular match and his security feeds. The Federation's success had brought unexpected complications. Fighting styles once kept secret for millennia were now being broadcast across the galaxy. Some species saw this as a threat to their military advantages. Others viewed it as an opportunity to study potential adversaries. In the VIP section, Chen watched corporate representatives from a dozen worlds negotiate broadcasting rights. The Federation's economic impact had exceeded all projections. Tourism to Nexus 7 had increased tenfold. Previously hostile species were establishing trade routes just to be part of the fighting circuit. Remarkable how they've adapted, Dr. Xandar observed, their tentacles rippling with appreciation as Telera used a modified human wrestling technique to disrupt Whisper of Stars' coherence field. Who would have thought an Arxer could master void particle combat? But beneath the surface of success, tensions were brewing. The Meridian Collective had filed a formal protest, claiming their liquid-form fighters were being discriminated against in the rankings. The Valaxian Crystal Consortium was demanding changes to the resonance-dampening fields, arguing they gave unfair advantages to organic species. Wang's security team discovered the first serious threat during the quarterfinals. A group of rogue elements from various species had formed a shadow organization called the True Combat League. They were organizing unsanctioned fights without safety protocols or restrictions. "They're using our success against us," Chen explained to the emergency board meeting, claiming we've sanitized combat and promising more authentic experiences. 3 fighters have already died in their underground matches. The situation escalated when Granite Heart, a celebrated Krell champion, disappeared after being approached by TCL recruiters. The Federation faced a choice: crack down on the underground fights and risk dragging them further into the shadows, or find a way to address the demands for less restricted combat. The solution came from an unexpected source. During a late-night strategy session, Maya Patel was watching historical footage of human martial arts evolution when inspiration struck. "We need to embrace the challenge, not fight it," she announced to the board the next morning. The Federation announced the creation of legacy brackets, special matches with modified rules that allowed for more aggressive combat while maintaining essential safety protocols. The fights would be restricted to species with compatible biology and would require extensive waivers and preparation. Critics called it a dangerous concession, but the move drew support from unexpected quarters. Several warrior cultures that had previously opposed the Federation now saw it as preserving important martial traditions while adapting to modern realities. The tournament's semifinals became a showcase for both styles of combat. In the main bracket, Telera's tactical precision demonstrated the evolution of regulated combat. In the legacy bracket, veterans of various species showed the raw power of traditional fighting arts. But Wang's security concerns proved prophetic. During the legacy bracket semifinals, his team detected quantum fluctuations in the arena's containment fields. Someone was attempting to sabotage the safety systems. "Multiple breaches detected," his AI assistant reported. "Pattern suggests coordinated attack." As Wang's team raced to counter the sabotage attempt, Chen faced a difficult decision. The finals were scheduled to begin in less than an hour. Millions were watching. Postponing the matches could cause panic and give credibility to those who claimed regulated combat was too risky. "We proceed," she ordered, but with enhanced security protocols. "And send me everything we have on the TCL. It's time to bring this shadow war into the light." The finals became legendary, not just for the spectacular matches, but for what happened behind the scenes. As Telera and Whisper of Stars prepared for their championship bout, Wang's team engaged in a silent battle with the saboteurs. In her private quarters, Chen recorded a message to the Federation board. "We've created something powerful here, but with that power comes responsibility. The next phase isn't just about organizing fights, it's about protecting what we've built. The galaxy is watching, and not everyone wants us to succeed." The tournament's conclusion would mark a turning point, but not in the way anyone expected. As the champions were crowned and the crowd celebrated, the real battle was just beginning. The Federation had proven that regulated combat could unite species, but now they faced a greater challenge: protecting their vision of honorable competition from those who would corrupt it. The underground circuit. Deep in the maintenance levels of Nexus 7, Admiral Wang moved silently through the shadows, accompanied by a select team of specialists from 5 different species. Intelligence had finally pinpointed the location of the True Combat League's main operations hub. "Remember," he sub-vocalized through their secure network, This is a surveillance mission only. We need proof of their activities before we can act. His Kethel Scout, a specialized particle cluster named Dustin Shadows, flowed through the ventilation system ahead of them. The underground fighting circuit had grown more sophisticated and dangerous. What started as unsanctioned matches had evolved into a criminal enterprise spanning multiple sectors. The TCL wasn't just organizing illegal fights, they were weaponizing them for political gain. Granite Hart, the missing Krell champion, had resurfaced in a horrifying underground video. The proud warrior had been forced to fight in chemically enhanced states against multiple opponents. The footage ended with his crystalline armor shattered, a deliberate message to those who would oppose the TCL. In her office above, Chen reviewed the latest intelligence reports with Maya Patel and Dr. Xandar. They're targeting our legitimacy, Chen explained, projecting a map of known TCL activities. Every authentic fight they stage undermines what we've built. The TCL had begun marketing their matches as true tests of species supremacy. Without rules or restrictions, they claimed, natural superiority could finally be proven. It was a message that resonated with extremists from various species who resented the Federation's emphasis on controlled competition. Maya's analysis of their broadcasting patterns revealed a disturbing trend. They're not just running fights, she explained, manipulating a holographic data cluster. They're staging specific matches to inflame existing tensions between species. Look at the timing of these events compared to diplomatic incidents. Down in the maintenance levels, Wang's team discovered something worse than they'd imagined. The TCL wasn't just operating a fighting ring. They'd built a complete shadow arena. But unlike the Federation's carefully regulated facilities, this one was designed for maximum spectacle regardless of fighter safety. Quantum scanner shows residual energy signatures from at least 20 different species, reported Kavar, their Arxer tech specialist. And these readings, they're using band combat enhancers, molecular accelerators, neural overchargers. The evidence painted a dark picture. The TCL was offering desperate fighters from struggling worlds massive payouts to participate in death matches. Others were being coerced through threats or blackmail. The matches were being broadcast through encrypted channels to private audiences willing to pay premium rates for unrestricted combat. Chen brought the evidence to the Galactic Council, but political response was complicated by the involvement of several prominent families and corporations. Some council members were secretly profiting from the underground circuits while publicly supporting the Federation. The situation reached a crisis point during a major Federation tournament. As T-Lara prepared to defend her title, the TCL launched a coordinated attack on the Federation's broadcast network. Millions of viewers suddenly found their feeds hijacked by footage from an underground match. This is real combat, the TCL announcement declared. No rules, no restrictions, no mercy. This is how species truly prove their worth. The footage showed a brutal free-for-all between chemically enhanced fighters from 6 different species. The violence was deliberate and shocking, designed to make the Federation's regulated matches look tame in comparison. But the TCL had miscalculated. Instead of attracting support, their broadcast horrified viewers. Species that had been considering underground participation withdrew. Anonymous tips about TCL operations began flooding Federation security channels. Wang's team launched coordinated raids across multiple sectors. They discovered fight pits where injured competitors were left to die, laboratories developing illegal combat enhancers, and evidence linking several council members to the operation. The Federation faced a choice: handle the matter quietly to avoid political fallout, or make a public stand. Chen chose transparency. In a galaxy-wide broadcast, she revealed everything they'd discovered about the TCL's operations. The difference between sport and savagery isn't in the level of violence, she declared. It's in the purpose. The Federation exists to celebrate skill, courage, and mutual respect. The TCL exists only to profit from pain and division. The response was overwhelming. Species that had been neutral toward the Federation now actively supported its mission. Former champions volunteered to help rehabilitate fighters rescued from the underground circuit. Even some TCL operators, disgusted by what they'd become involved with, came forward with information. Granite Heart was finally rescued during a raid on a TCL facility in the Outer Rim. The Krell warrior's recovery became a symbol of the Federation's commitment to protecting all fighters, regardless of their origin or past choices. In the aftermath, the Federation emerged stronger, but sobered by how close they'd come to losing everything they'd built. The rules and restrictions they'd created weren't just about safety. They were about preserving the honor and purpose of combat sports in a galaxy that needed outlets for competition without destruction. "We didn't just shut down an illegal fighting ring," Juan reflected in his final report. "We proved that regulated combat isn't just safer, it's better. Real warriors don't need to prove themselves through brutality. They prove themselves through skill, discipline, and respect for their opponents." Champions of the Stars. 5 years after the fall of the TCL, Nexus 7's Grand Arena had been transformed for the most ambitious event in Federation history, the first Galactic Championship of Champions. The station's massive central dome now housed an arena complex that could adapt to any form of combat from any known species. Tilara, now a Federation Council member as well as a defending champion, stood in the competitors' preparation area, watching fighters from over 100 worlds prepare for the opening ceremony. The young Arxer, who had once been skeptical of regulated combat, had become one of its strongest advocates. "Remember when some said different species could never compete fairly?" she asked Chen, who was making final preparations for the ceremony. "Now look at us." She gestured to where a Meridian liquid-formed fighter was practicing joint techniques with a Krell crystal warrior, each adapting their natural abilities to complement the other's style. The championship wasn't just a tournament. It was a celebration of how far they'd come. The Federation had evolved from a controversial experiment into a cornerstone of galactic culture. Species that once viewed each other with suspicion now exchanged training techniques and celebrated each other's victories. Maya's technical innovations had revolutionized both competition and spectating. The arena could shift its environmental conditions instantly, allowing fighters to showcase their abilities in their natural elements while keeping the competition fair. Quantum-linked viewing spheres let audiences experience matches from any perspective, complete with cultural context and tactical analysis. Incoming transmission from the Outer Rim qualifiers, Wang reported, now serving as Federation Security Director. The qualifying matches had been expanded to remote sectors, allowing emerging spacefaring species to compete. 3 new species requesting late registration. Their combat styles are interesting. The championship's opening ceremony became a display of unity that would have seemed impossible years before. Representatives from every member species carried their traditional weapons in a parade of honor, each demonstrating the signature technique that was broadcast across the galaxy. Granite Heart, fully recovered and now serving as a mentor to young fighters, led a demonstration of how traditional combat forms could be adapted to regulated competition. The Krell warrior's journey from underground victim to respected teacher embodied everything the Federation stood for. The matches themselves showcased the evolution of interstellar combat sports. Fighters weren't just competing. They were innovating, combining techniques from multiple species into entirely new fighting styles. A Skithal collective merged its particle form with Valaxian crystal techniques, creating displays of combat that were both lethal and beautiful. But the tournament's defining moment came during an unexpected crisis. During a high-profile match between champions from traditionally hostile species, sensors detected an anomaly in the arena's containment field. Instead of panicking, the fighters immediately stopped their match and worked together to help evacuate spectators. "This is what we built," Chen said during the emergency response. "Not just an arena or a tournament, but a community. Real warriors protect others, even at the cost of their own glory." The crisis was averted, and when the match resumed, the audience witnessed something remarkable. The fighters, who represented species that had been at war for generations, showed such respect for each other's skills that their match became an impromptu demonstration of unity. As the championship progressed, new traditions were born. Winners would honor their opponents by learning and performing a technique from their opponent's fighting style. Cultural barriers that had existed for millennia began to break down as species gained deeper appreciation for each other's traditions. The Federation's influence extended far beyond sports. Trade routes followed the tournament circuit. Diplomatic relations improved as species that met in the arena found common ground in other areas. The championship had become a forum for cultural exchange and peaceful interaction. In the final match, Tulera faced a young fighter from one of the newly discovered species in the Outer Rim. The bout combined classical techniques with innovations that would have been impossible before the Federation. When it ended, both fighters saluted each other with gestures from each other's cultures. During the closing ceremony, Chen addressed the assembled champions and spectators. When we started this journey, many said it was impossible, that different species could never compete fairly, that combat could never bring peace. But look around you. In this arena, we're not divided by biology or history. We're united by respect, honor, and the pursuit of excellence. The championship concluded with a display that symbolized everything they'd achieved. Champions from every competing species performed a synchronized demonstration of combat forms, their natural abilities flowing together in a dance of controlled power and mutual respect. As the celebration continued, Shen updated her final entry in the Federation's founding documents. We created this Federation to regulate combat, but we achieved something greater. We proved that the greatest victories don't come from defeating others, but from elevating each other. In these arenas, we don't just crown champions, we forge bonds between stars. The Galactic Combat Federation had become more than its founders ever imagined. A living proof that competition didn't have to mean conflict, that differences could be strengths, and that even in combat, the galaxy could find unity.